7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
That's how Anthony screws up the intro.
Once again.
Yeah, once again. I forgot to unloop loop, but it's all right. I was staring at your face. My
Oh,
apologies.
God.
Oh, this is what happens when you leave me in control.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah, and by the way, just for everybody watching, the AJ is actually Amanda Jane.
Yeah. Anyway. You know what? First, I want you to introduce our guest right now. So please introduce our guest.
All right. Well, we have two people coming on. We have our co-host, Johnny from Paracryptos, and we have our guest for tonight, who is Andy Guy from SCIRE Tech. There's Johnny, and there's Andy.
Hey, what's going on?
Hang on.
Hey, you want to know what? I'm so happy that you almost had trouble with the name too. So now I don't feel that bad. See what I'm saying?
No, I was still trying to get around the Amanda Jane part.
I was getting over the deja vu that I had from this countdown that kept on going on and on.
Right? I know. I'm so sorry about that, Andy. Normally that doesn't happen, but of course today it's just not working out. I worked overnight past 2 nights, so I'm kind of like still on the.
World's smallest fiddles out again here.
Oh my gosh! All right.
Anyway, Andy, Johnny, Andy.
Hi, Andy. Nice to meet you. I'm at work myself, so I'm kind of like all over the place.
Yeah, well, I can see even you're doing more now than AJ does in the whole night.
Yeah.
Carry on, Amanda. Go ahead.
Don't make me sit you in the corner.
I know. Well, I wanted to ask you, Jenny, how you been? Because I know there was a warning out over there. So has everything been all right with the weather?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it was. I'm just going to take my earpiece out because it's really muffled. We had a. Can you hear me? Is everything? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, cool. So we had a state of emergency, another one, which basically what's happening is every storm that we've been having that sweeps through every couple of weeks is just heavy. So we did have like cyclones come through again. There's another one due this week. And every single time it happens, the rain is just so torrential that it just floods everything. We've got mountains with landslips, and it's just been pretty crazy. Like,
well, I'm glad
we've just been smashed, absolutely smashed with the weather. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad everything's all right.
Mother Nature's having her way.
Yeah, right.
She's the boss.
Well, anyway, let's get going with the show. What I wanted to first ask you is, Andy, can you tell us, our viewers and everyone, just a little bit about yourself, your background, and all that type of stuff, please?
Sure. So background is kind of a background of electrical engineering. So I worked for Dell for a bit, and then moved on from that to more computer sciences, databases, etc. Then into project management. But the paranormal side, my interest came back from when I was a kid. I used to go to the library in the school and just check out all the paranormal books, the Osborne Book of Ghosts and anything I could really get my hands on. I hadn't ever seen anything or witnessed anything. It was just such a fascinating topic. And it wasn't until later on I got to go to a public investigation with a team that I really even got any sort of experiences on my own. I was always kind of academically very interested in this big mystery and how people were seeing all these things, and we hadn't yet actually proven they existed. And then when I actually moved into the investigating, that's kind of what I try to do. I'll try to look at if there was something to it, and then after then try to work out what it was. So that's kind of where I've come from. It is actually trying to understand some of the science behind the things that people are witnessing, and drill down on things we're actually experiencing and patterns we're seeing to then understand a little bit more about what we're doing out there.
Wow, that is awesome. That is absolutely awesome. And it's so nice to meet someone that has an electrical engineering background, because there's so many questions that I've had in this field that I would love to ask you at another time, but about equipment and stuff like that. But Robin, go ahead and ask your question, man.
No, I'm just fascinated on people that come in from different backgrounds and stuff. I mean, you're one of the first ones, Andy, that has actually come in and said, well, I didn't have any experiences. I was just interested in it. Normally, everybody that comes on is like, well, when I was 4, I seen this, or when I was 9, this happened to me. And it just gets, it starts someone off on a trail. But it's nice to actually see someone coming in who didn't have the experiences to start with and was just interested in it and just wanted to look further into it. So, how do you think that's helped you in your career so far in the paranormal compared to people who actually have experiences, who sort of start off with an experience and work that way, where you come in like the opposite way?
I think for me, it's going to left me in a position where I've not come into it with a position of belief. It's more a inquisitive skepticism. So I don't ever look to just poo-poo anything. I look to try and understand it a little bit more. So for me, it's never about like what you're doing is wrong and what you're doing is wrong. It's more like, okay, so something's happening with you. Let's try and look at the variables in that and break it down. And if you want to kind of say this is paranormal, then I'll work with you to try and then knock out the things which someone can just say, no, it's that, and really focus on. So I'm kind of very middle ground, that I don't feel like I need to believe in something because I've witnessed things that I can't explain. But I then don't also then just say everything is natural, everything's the wind, is your own imagination, because that doesn't help either, because I'm interested in trying to progress our understanding of it. So chucking things out is a waste of data, really. It's more about picking the wheat from the chaff, and if you need to refine what people are getting, then try and figure out how you can do that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you, like, what was one of your first experiences that you had when you started to get into this work?
So it was literally my first investigation. We went to Woodchester Mansion, which is just kind of funny. I went there on Friday as well, but went to Woodchester Mansion, and it was with a group, and it wasn't the best organized. There were people kind of running around the whole building everywhere, and I'd kind of come from a background of wanting to learn about it, so I'd watched all the TAPS shows and everything. So first investigation, went there with a Mel meter and a night vision camera, and I was wandering around trying to find a space where I couldn't just hear people screaming and shouting and running around. And I went near the entrance to the building because no one was bothering them there. And as I was going past this room, I thought, oh, I've not been in that room. Maybe it's a bit quiet. Maybe I can just go in there and do a bit of calling out. And I turned the camera to face that room, and it was blocked off. And for some reason, I thought that you could get through there. And I went to look through the hole. And I don't know if I'm not mediumistic or psychic or anything at all, but you tend to kind of get this sort of weird, sort of heavy, sort of Scooby-Doo-y feeling sometimes. You think, oh, this is an interesting place to stop and investigate. So I did, and I just felt like I was being watched or something. So I said, are you watching me? Why are you watching me? And then in the earphones which I had into the camera, I heard Arthur. So that was that, and it's on the recording as well. And I've had some better things since then, but that was so impactful for me as well, that it was not around. It wasn't on the recorder I had just down the corridor. It was just on this camera. I heard it real time, and that grabbed me because it coincidentally was the name of my father who'd passed a couple of years ago. But I didn't jump to that conclusion because for me it's like, why would he be here and saying his own name? But looking into it in the building, there was an Arthur who was the child of one of the owners who died at a very young age. Wow. And listening to the audio, it sounds sad. Arthur sounds like it's lamenting Arthur as opposed to telling me its name. So that was the first one, but also it was for me, it was a game changer. It's like, oh, there is something to this. I need to really understand what's going on here.
Right. I love when something like that happens too. Like like, did you research that like before? You didn't like research that before, obviously. You said you
No.
researched that afterwards. So
I did
I
research
love when
building
that
and
happens.
the William League, etc., but we didn't,
Of course.
because it was the child died at such a young age. It wasn't really in the
Yeah.
papers or anything. And we only found out years later, after several returns, that
Wow.
there was an Arthur, because they put like a family tree inside Woodchester, and it wasn't there at the time, and we didn't know. And it was like, oh, that's where it came from. That's where Arthur was.
Wow, that is so awesome. See, I love when stuff like that happens because that totally does it. Good evening, Henry. How are you? And
See,
I
Woodchester Mansion is somewhere over here that I've always wanted to go to, and I haven't been yet.
It's a great place to investigate, even with like a really small team, because they do this kind of deals on a Friday for small team rates. So I've been there a couple of times with just 3 people, and it's great to investigate. It's such a huge building, and knowing you are the only people there, and if anything is walking around or banging, it's not just some other part of the group that's being careless. It's well worth a visit, and not too dear compared to some of the places that you can rent out.
Yeah.
Now, before in the back, you were talking about your team and stuff like that. Can you talk a little bit about your team, when you had it started, and about a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I investigate with a team called Southern Ghost Society, which is kind of set up as a not-for-profit. So does a mixture of private events. So you have then kind of regular people who investigate for years, people you kind of trust, who then act as team leaders for public events. So there's a bit of a balance between the two, mainly because you tend to find if private teams go too long, you lose people and they just kind of die out. So we kind of like having a bit of a mixture of public and private, because then you get to meet new people, and then some of those people then become part of the regular team, and you kind of get this sort of fresh blood approach to it. And it's run by a guy called Dan Marchant, and I've been the tech guy in it for, I don't know, a lot of years. So I started off with building all the kit that we use there. So the data loggers and environmental sensors and everything which is actually part of the research we've been doing for the past 12 years.
That is awesome. Now, when you log your data, sorry, Robin, I just want to ask this one question.
No, okay.
You. When you log your data, how do you go about doing it? Are you old school with pen and paper, or do you do it on?
No.
Yeah. So tell me.
So I took this approach from an experiment that was done in the 70s, where they built this they call it the Spider, which was a data logger, and it was built on a trolley. I called Tony Cornell from Bradley, and had lots of cables going off to different environmental sensors. And I thought, well, it's technology's progressed. We have Arduinos now and lots of sensors. So I built a Spider, but it was just in a simple box. And that electronically every second records the temperature and the air pressure and the humidity and the EMF, and calculates the dew point, as well as if fog is possible or if dust is possible to suspend in the air, and the current battery level. But also enabled us to click a remote button and then do a little stamp at that point in the data. And what we do is then record an event, something happens, I hit a stamp, and then I can then upload that to my website. The website then goes, you stamp, dun, 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 dun. And I have another stamp, which is for when you start your audio recorders. And then I can choose that to then just do checks of whenever you've seen something, go to those points. So we start with just one, and then we move to, if we have a team of 3, each have one. It's also then I built a backpack, which made it mobile, so I could walk around, film, dual audio, as well as the data logging. But the best bit, and this is my advice, and whenever people ask me, what do I do to kind of, have a bit more control, we have one outside as well. So afterwards, we look at graphs and go, okay, air pressure started fluctuating in this room, or the temperature dropped. The graph shows what happened outside as well. So we just very quickly go, okay, that was just natural. That was a bit of wind and the temperature dropped.
That is great.
You can say, oh, no, that temperature drop, that was just in that room. It wasn't in the other team room. It wasn't outside. For some reason, that temperature dropped 3 degrees just next to that person.
That is awesome. Now tell me, do you also take notes? Are you like a note taker too while you're out in the field?
No, because the way that we do my
Good.
backpack, I just
Oh,
hit
okay.
a button and I just say what I've
Yeah.
seen or
Yep.
witnessed, and then that's on the recording. I can just jump to that point, and then
I figured that. I just didn't know if you were ever doing something and you were like, gotta write some notes down
I
quick.
used to. I used to have a
Yeah.
little kind of a clipboard on a stretchy thing on my waist and was writing things down until I progressed it to not need that anymore.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I love that. It's just funny because I did it myself. Like I do that myself. I still do the notebook thing sometimes and all this stuff. And I have tons of notebooks of just stuff in it. And it's funny. Like I love the way that you just switched it over though, because the way that you have it now is just absolutely awesome. I mean, to be able to have it also outside too, like you just said, is such a great experiment because it, like you said, it shows if it's natural or if it's not, which I think is so important in an investigation. So that is
And the
so
nice thing
great,
is,
man.
I found as well that I was building up this big pile of evidence. I'd like this. Oh, this is a great EVP, or that was interesting. And then what do you do with it? And all these notes and this information, what do you do with it? So by turning it into an electronic form in a database, my site compares everything. So it can tell us that for footsteps, the conditions that they occur in are between this and this humidity, this and this temperature, this light level, etc. And that's where we started seeing patterns that you were having fluctuations in air pressure, for example, which occurred just before someone clicked and logged an event. And over investigations, I then developed these data loggers to also become alerts, which then showed graphs of this air pressure fluctuation, which then people went, oh, okay, the air pressure is fluctuating. Let's pay attention now. Let's see what's going on. So we took that pile of things that happened and turned them more into data points, which then helps you focus more going on. And I know it's kind of blowing your whistle, but it's been quite successful in being able to kind of draw people's attention when they might otherwise just be, having a natter about another location or something.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love the way that you do it. I think that's absolutely awesome. Robin, go ahead, man.
No, I just want to ask you this. I'm going to touch on the age-old subject again here, the one that seems to rub a lot of people up the wrong way. But orbs, right? So everybody has their view on them. A lot of people don't believe them, and this, that, and the other. But do you think in your line of work as an inventor, as a creator of equipment, that it's possible at some point down the line to invent something? And I mean, you might have already been mentioning it, but to invent something that you can actually tell, was that orb, for instance, that you just seen there, was that actually paranormal, or what, or is there a lot of dust in the atmosphere, or I mean, there's all this subject where people will say, oh, it was definitely an orb, and other ones will look and say, no, it wasn't, it was an insect, or it was a dusty area. And I have ways of looking at it where if someone says it was dust but it was only one orb, I was like, well, if it was dust there'd be loads of them, things like that. But is there anything you reckon that you can invent in the future that could possibly try and divide the opinions on that?
One thing I did, I mentioned very briefly, was one of the data points which we're recording each second is the possibility of dust being suspended in the air or not, because there's a humidity condition, which means it's humid, dust just fall because it gets too wet. So again, it comes back to variables. You've got to try and remove these variables to prove things or disprove things. So if you could say dust can't be in the air, it wouldn't float around anymore, it's too wet, it would just sink. So if you get an orb when that condition says dust is possible, then for me, you've not controlled all these variables, and scientifically you say this is still a possibility, it still can be dust.
Yeah.
But if you rule them out, you go, it can't be dust because there's no way dust would be floating around.
No, it's just the reason I asked the question is because you'll see ones, they'll move in a certain way, I mean, and you'll think, well, why would dust move in that, in that direction? You'll maybe see, for people who can see or sense a spirit in one area, and it'll be like trying to get your attention, and all of a sudden on the camera you'll see what, well, for want of a better word, a light anomaly come from that direction towards you, and it's like, well, then to me that it's quite possibly something paranormal. But obviously, because the people who are watching aren't actually there, well, they're going to say, well, you obviously could just say that the spirit was over that way, and you could just say that it was coming towards you. But, I just think there has to be something of all the equipment that people are making for communication and movement and, and EVPs and stuff. Surely there's got to be something down the line that can separate light anomalies from like insects and stuff like that.
Yeah, I suspect so, because it is all just a collection of variables. And like you, I've seen some very compelling footage, but that tends to be when you have, I think the terms are preponderance of evidence, where we're trying to prove something amazing. We need to have a lot of evidence to prove it. So if we want to prove that an anomaly on the camera is representation of a spirit form in just like one point of energy, then it's up to us then to improve the amount of evidence we have to prove it. Proving that particular piece of light on the pixel on the screen isn't enough, because if you said that light that's the proof of life after death, you go, that's not enough for me. Even if you could say it's definitely not bugs, definitely not dust, it's still not proof of anything. It's just a proof that there was a light on the camera. The interesting bits when you kind of you tie in it with other factors, like, was that light actually emitting on anything? So I've seen good footage where, fairly recently actually, at Merley House, where one of the people who worked there was just sitting inside the lobby, kind of keeping out of everyone's way, and then they started filming around, and they had this light anomaly that kind of floated through the air, and they showed it me, and I was like, okay, I've seen this sort of thing before. And then it passed to the table, and the table lit up underneath it. You think, okay, so now you've introduced this other variable that not only do you see that light on the camera, the table is lighting up from that particular light. So you've then got two pieces of evidence as opposed just to that one. I've also seen it where people's equipment have gone off as that light has passed those. And in that case, you then got another piece of evidence to back up that one bit of light. But in itself, you've only got a little bit of light recorded on a camera, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
You know what stinks? I feel like no matter how much evidence we come out and prove, I feel like there's going to be some people that still, no matter what, it'll never be enough. But still, like, in a scientific aspect, for like people like me and you and and Rob and stuff like that, like, that would be enough for me to have scientific proof that the scientific community would acknowledge and come out and say that it was true. That would be enough for me to finally be like, I could put this down. Maybe I still would do my own research, but still, like, I would not be striving towards something so major. You know what I mean? I would be more complacent in the little goals. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I think that that's a great thing, the way that you said it and how you would measure it and stuff like that, because that's absolutely awesome. I
think the thing about it, AJ, is not to cut you off, but I think what I was trying to say was, where we have, communication wise, there's always a newer spirit box being brought out by a different company. There's always a newer, motion detector being brought out by a different company. There's always a newer, infrared flashlight. There's newer cameras that are coming out that can get, and there's always newer stuff that's coming out. But it's like to me, orbs is the one thing in this field that can cause a lot of arguments. And
because they're caught in isolation. I mean, if you
there's an opening there for someone.
So if you had like a shadow or light detector, which was present at the same time as recording that video, and that detected that light, then that would prove that that what you caught on the camera existed in the physical plane and not just an anomaly on the camera.
Yeah.
That's
Johnny, have you got a question?
If you'd seen the light with your eyes and the camera picked it up, then you would have had an light on it. I've recorded a couple of times where I've seen a light and logged it and then gone back, not really expecting it's going to be there because your eyes play tricks, but then actually see a light on the camera. And at that point, it's not an orb. It's a light anomaly where it's physically been in the world and you've recorded it.
Yeah.
Because the question is, if you didn't see it, how did the camera see it?
Yes, absolutely. You know, and one thing I want to say about that before I give it over to Jenny quick, I just want to say I was at Montana State Prison, and when I was there, I saw a light anomaly twinkle in the jail cell, and I caught it actually on the camera as well in the night vision, which I was so happy that I caught it. But it was so amazing to see because it's like where did that sparkle come? Where did that light come from all of a sudden? You
Yeah.
know, it was really weird to see. But I know what you were saying. But Jenny, go ahead.
Listen.
What was your question, Jenny?
Just a quick, you know, talking about, you know, equipment and like if there's anything that you have that's able to pick up on things. So one of my experiences is I was doing a house cleanse, and I called in this conduit. I've only worked with her like twice before, but I've never seen anything like this. So what she was doing is while she was calling in the angels, so, you know, Archangel Gabriel, Michael, all that, I was witnessing her complete aura was changing. So it was almost like as she would call in, her color would change to the angel that it was. It was the most phenomenal thing I've ever witnessed in my life. And then recently, I met a lady who has had the same thing. So she literally walked into a meet and greet that I had while I was in Australia, and she knew she had to come down and meet me. And so when she did, she's walked in and she's just this beaming aura of light. And when I seen her, another friend of mine was sort of looked at me like, are you seeing what I'm seeing? And I'm like, I'm seeing this. Like, she just had this radiant aura around her. So, I mean, you know, you get things like aura readings and stuff like that. But is there anything that you can pick up that would actually collectively capture, you know, it's almost like a I'm not going to say bioluminescence because it's not, you know, on the structure of what we know bioluminescence to be. But is there anything that is available that can capture that in action, I guess? Or have you considered creating anything that is of that?
No,
you know,
no, not at all. I think there's a lot of human factor there that it would be hard to kind of disassociate from the environmental factor. I'm quite interested in your theory though about how different colors are generated, because colors would indicate a wavelength, and the human body does generate an electrical field, and several fields in fact, and those all are on different wavelengths. So do you think colors, they may be linked to the wavelength of those naturally generating fields?
Well, in what I seen, I witnessed angels coming into her, doing what she needed them to do. As in, you know, one would just come in and then she would radiate this color, and then it would fade away, and then you could almost see it move out while she's calling in the next one, and then the next one. I watched wings wrap around her, and it was just the most crazy thing. But while we were cleansing, we'd opened up this vortex to kind of like try and get as far spread as we possibly could to get spirits to come in and pass over. And at that point, it was almost watching the colors go through her and watching these spirits come into her. She's a conduit, so she's and very, very good. Now, I've never seen anything like it. Only those 2 times that I've ever witnessed anything like that. Probably never witness it again, but, you know, hopefully I do, because it's pretty magical. But I was just querying, you know, if there was anything that you had, because we did discuss when I was talking about it, you know, it would be great if somebody could invent something that would capture that, you know, and I thought maybe that would be an idea for you, or if you have considered doing anything like that.
Well, everything I do comes from what we witness and what the conditions were and what environmental impacts that particular thing is. So that can be things like moon phases, number of people present, the energy in the room, the time of night and time of day, etc. So to get to that end point, we'd need to then capture what energy was present during those events. So I don't make things which are, oh, that's a good idea, I'm going to try and make something that senses like this and then make it beep. That's not the direction I come from. I come from researching something that someone's witnessed, and then seeing these patterns, seeing if there is a change in the bioelectricity that is close to a human, then you can then go, I see. So you have got a bit of ability which you can't communicate through to an electrical device, because it's something, a skill and a talent and something unknown to decide still what exactly you can do. But if that is impacting the world at the same point, then that is measurable in some way. But it would need a lot of research to then see exactly how to then detect that.
Okay.
Definitely.
I'm actually like really interested on how far this could go. I mean, when you're looking at even, you know, such energies as like, you know, being able to remote view, have you studied somebody in that? Like, have you been able to sit and, you know, video somebody doing that, be able to study their energy field around them while they are in that moment?
No, I don't tend to do specifically psychical skill. I don't focus on any sort of psychic skill, either debunking or proving or focusing on whatsoever. Mine is more about people's experiences that they've witnessed, usually with their five senses opposed to sixth sense.
Yeah. No, I totally get that.
Yeah.
You can do this, and there's been a lot of studies conducted by a lot of good institutions, and they've got entire departments of people who do psychical research.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of focus. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to take a more broader sweep approach as opposed to focus on, because you have to focus on individual by individual as well. Because no two people who have a set of skills which are not really acknowledged as scientific have the same set of skills. They have different strengths, weaknesses. Some people can see things, people can hear them, some people taste them, and you really would have to just focus on the individual and work with the individual for a long period of time to be able to then see any patterns, I think.
Yeah. No, I totally understand
Interesting,
that.
though.
Hey, yeah, I wanted to actually ask. I wanted to ask you if you could start showing us some of your work, some of your devices.
Yeah,
that
sure.
I would love to see them.
I'll talk you the story then. So the first thing I put together was called a TAD, which is a thermal anomaly detector. And what that does is it's a bit light actually. It lights up. So I had a number of different bits of kit, and I'm not sure about you guys, but half my kit box is full of equipment which is there to check the other half. And I was having bits of equipment go off and saying there was a temperature change, but then I have other equipment that says it's not changing at all. So which do I believe? So I wanted to get something which was focused on, like this, where it's detecting a hotspot, focused on detecting hot spots and cold spots, because I had lots of data when those have occurred, and I saw the pattern of the change of the temperature. And I thought, okay, I've seen that pattern. I'm just going to focus on when a hotspot occurs and when a cold spot occurs. And I know how much that's changed by. And that's the important bit. You have the knowledge of the equipment. And when you tend to buy things, they don't tell you how it works, and they don't tell you how it changes by. So you don't really learn from it. You just see something's happened and then you try and react to it.
Yeah.
So I first started producing the thermal anomaly detectors, and those went down pretty well. And I used to use them all over as well. Whenever someone started feeling cold or warm, I would just plonk one by them, so then it can then have the extra validation of what they were experiencing, which kind of helped back up quite a lot of experiences in some places. Along this time, we started seeing a lot of air pressure fluctuation, which was occurring during sometimes these hot cold spots, but also when K2s were going off, or people were hearing footsteps, or any sort of things. It was kind of unusual. It was like over 0.7 micropascals. You get kind of these small effects, and then over 0.10, so 1.9, there were bigger things. So I made this device, which is the Aeroflux, and its job is just to look for that pattern of fluctuation and then alert you that pay attention, something might be happening. And generally speaking, random air pressure doesn't change it. It's looking for a very specific pattern to then go, yeah, I can see this. It's going on.
Wow.
And these have been very useful to a lot of teams. They've come back and said they've been amazing. I put them in doorways. I put them outside the area. I put them inside the area. And whenever it goes off, things are happening. And to me, that's really validating that other teams around the world have said, yeah, I'm seeing the same thing, that this is actually going on at the same time as that, which to me is good scientific method, is finding results and then allowing other people to replicate the experiment.
Absolutely.
And then as for experiments, I went to a couple of places where they had footsteps, and I was really interested to find out, okay, so people are hearing footsteps. Are they detecting the footsteps just by listening to the sound of the air pressure changing the footstep, or is the stair actually moving, or the footstep actually making the wood on the floor actually vibrate? So I looked into geophones and thought, oh, they're kind of expensive. So I came up with the Seismo because I wanted to put those down, like, several stairs on a staircase to see if footsteps are occurring, where were they and how far they were. So we found a much kind of more economical way of doing the same thing, same sort of sensitivity, and that is the Seismo, which is a seismometer that alerts to changes. And it was quite interesting because the place we were looking at, I put them down the stairs, were in these footsteps, and we saw them go off for a bit down the first few and then stop. We still heard the footsteps. So it's almost like the energy of that, it seemed residual recording had enough to kind of impact the seismos, but then after that point didn't, and it was just audio, which is fascinating because that tells you a little bit something about it, as opposed to just saying, oh, I heard some footsteps.
I find it absolutely fascinating. I love that. See, that is so great. Please keep going.
And the last one, which I generally put out there, is called the Magnavox, because it's a magnetometer which then detects a change. So what we saw, we did this magnetometer data log across lots of investigations, and then looked at if it changed, if the magnetic field changed. So we're not talking about EMF, we're talking about magnetic field. So magnetic energy which isn't moving is a magnetic field. And what we were seeing was occasionally you'd see spikes in one polarity, or sometimes a switch to the other polarity field, so a north to south field which is present. So what this does is, for the first 5 minutes of being on, it's just monitoring the natural magnetic field and then detecting any natural anomalies that occur in that point. And then it kind of baselines those and forgets about that. And then after that point, if it sees any spikes or it sees any changes, then it alerts and tells you. And that's been fascinating. We've been detecting some really interesting patterns where that's only going off in areas where people are like investigating. It's almost like it needs the energy of people investigating to make those changes to the magnetic field, as opposed to they sit in other areas and just they don't go off at all night.
I have always said that. Have I not said that, Robin, to you? That like it's always like I had some feeling that like the electromagnetic field, whatever. I always thought the magnetic part, the magnetic field had something really to do with the paranormal field, like hardcore. Like I just I couldn't think of something or create anything yourself. I'm not that talented. But I tell you what, that is absolutely awesome. I definitely want to speak to you more on this because I definitely would love to order some things from you because I love you, man. Like this is totally a game changer, man. This is awesome. Tell me, what is your opinion on spirit box and stuff like that?
To me, I'm not going to keep saying these words, but it comes down to variables. So if you're listening to that spirit box, there's several variables there which you have to eliminate in order to say this is something paranormal. This is not normal. One of them being radios. So if you're getting a radio station through, that's not paranormal. That's a radio station. That's a human broadcasting a radio station. The other factor is interpretation. So that's the person hearing this word coming out and saying, okay, I heard Tim. It was definitely Tim. That's what I heard. So I'm currently making one of my next devices is focused around the Estes method, because there's a lot of results coming out from people, but you have those variables there. You still have radio stations and people, even more so, only just hearing the words and they're saying them. you're using the spirit box without it, you've at least got maybe a group of people who are listening, and they can then debate what they heard. So yeah, just sneak preview, because it's not really out there. But what it does is it goes so fast that you don't pick up radio stations, but you can tune the speed like to be way beyond what the spirit box does. But also has a seek function, so it picks out the radio stations, and then on the next cycle skips them, so you miss those frequencies entirely. It also has another output jack, so you can put a audio recorder as you're doing this Estes. So later on, you can then sync that with an audio recorder, which is connected to a mic, or dual connect it with the one you got on your hand, and then other people can listen to it and go, yeah, I heard the same thing, or I didn't hear the same thing. And you don't have to then give that power suggestion type approach to it, and then you're saying, I definitely heard this. The last thing is a feature that's all kind of, I'm kind of drifted a little bit here, but you got me onto the subject now. The one thing I've seen in the Estes sessions is forgetting the variable factor for a second. When people are communicating back to the person who's asking the questions, they're not passing all the information. So a person you can be listening, you can be hearing, say, two voices who are kind of like communicating together, or you might hear a man, you hear a woman, or you might have someone who just appears out of nowhere, it's a different voice. And it's very hard for the person with the earphones in to then communicate that. So the person calling out and trying to use that method has no way of knowing that the conversation's actually shifted. So it's quite simple, but it's the device looks a bit like half a game controller. And it's got 3 buttons, which then project a light below, which then you can do different colors. So in advance, you can agree, say, okay, I'm going to session, and this, if it's a male voice, I'll hit green, and if it's a female voice, I'll hit blue. And then you can then do that so that you get that extra level of communication with the person.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Anthony Sabelos, one of our good friends and good pals, he asked, he said he's looking, let me pull it up. I'm looking for a device that could show the frequency of a place. What would you suggest? An
oscilloscope, basically. If
say that 3 times fast, Anthony. Oscilloscope.
Yeah, but then you need to work out the frequency of what, and then that's the sensor you need to feed into the oscilloscope to then determine what frequencies that thing's at. So one thing it's a really cheap hack, and not many people use it, but it's really game changing if you're interested in EMF. Is guitars and the pickups they have on them, so they're kind of like a few dots, electronic guitars. If you just take one of those, put a 3.5mm jack on it, and put it into your audio recorder, you can hear EMF. So you can wander around, and you can then hear not radio stations. You can hear like data cables and power lines. But if you're not anywhere near any of that, you can then just hear the EMF environment. But also, if you get any EMF on there which shouldn't be there, you stick that in, say, Audacity, do a spectrum analysis. You could tell the frequency of that EMF, which normally with a K2 you can't. You can tell the strength, but you can't learn anything about how much energy was there with the frequency.
You just gave me the best idea ever with that, because I'm a guitarist. So
you must have a bunch knocking around.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely do. So that's why you just totally gave me an idea, because I want to make my thing. I love communicating with a spirit box, but I want to like make them somehow in a better way, like how you're about to do. You're about to do something game changing with it, and I can't. I'm going to be one of the first people to order that thing, because you have no idea, Andy. You had me right to the screen, man. But yeah, Anthony, don't worry, man. I know I lost you a little bit of what he said, but don't worry, that you could go back and listen to it again. It's an oscilloscope, is what he said.
You could, in all seriousness, I went around with an oscilloscope for a little while when we were researching some of this stuff. You can get these little cheap handheld units that you just can connect to anything, and that will show you a waveform. And you can then, it requires a little bit of looking at a YouTube video to work out how they're working, but you can then check the frequencies of anything you put through it. So audio as well as EMF or even vibrations. You can find exactly more information about what you're detecting with these other sensors.
Yeah.
So the idea that you had for, let's get back to, because this was interesting to me now, that the spirit box, the new device that you're actually inventing, is that something along the lines, AJ, of what you've been speaking about to me for so long, of what you were trying to do?
Something like that, yeah. But he just gave the idea of like how to pick up the EMF field without having to like. So I was thinking about doing a spirit box without having to scan though. So like if
Yeah.
you moved it on a like an EMF field and you're reading EMF, I wonder if we can get responses through that EMF, wave. Do you think that we might be able to?
Well, I have a theory which I'm trying to
EVP?
focus on this year actually. It's to do with 90 spirit box sessions, but also EVPs. That
Yeah.
the way you're getting these things is not actually through the air, not through air fluctuations, but EMF, and that EMF is then being recorded through the dynamic microphone on the dictaphone or whatever, and that's how it's being recorded. But similarly, when people are either listening through spirit boxes or got them in their ears, they're actually hearing the amplifier in whatever device it is, picking up that EMF and then it being sent through to however they're listening through it. So either speaker or the earphone.
Yep.
So I've kind of got this theory that when you're seeing EMF spikes, those things could actually be communications. If you had a dictaphone near that EMF spike, could you be picking up an EVP at that point?
Yeah. I mean, I would think so.
Well, that's the thing. We need to focus on
Yeah.
experimenting with that.
No, definitely.
Yeah, the reason that I asked though was because you were talking, AJ, about working on higher frequencies, weren't you? Than is on a regular.
But I never thought EMF, and then you could just use the guitar pickup like that.
You
and,
don't.
hook it
You
up.
just stick a jack on the end of a pickup and plug it in something, and it changes your perception of EMF a hell of a lot just by walking around and hearing it. I used to have it debunking initially because people were going, I'm getting this K2 going off, what it is, and I would just go around listening and find where it came from.
Yeah. No, that is a great thing. That is awesome. Hey, Anthony already found one. Anthony already found one. He goes, I'm getting it. Look at. He found the oscilloscope. Good job, Andy.
We've made someone happy.
Right? Good job, Andy. But
before we go any further, I just want to find out, AJ, you need to add Andy after the show.
Yeah, we definitely need to chat for sure.
Because this is what AJ does, Andy, right? He says to me, he says, you go and get the guests, right? Which I do. And then I get the guests and I tell him who I've got. But then because he's co-host, when he should then go and friend request these people as well, he doesn't. And then when it comes to the show, at the end of it, he's like, oh, well, I've really got a friend request you after this to talk more about it. Well, just try doing it when I tell you, man.
Hey, he left out the one part, though, Andy. He left out the one part where this is all he says. I go, so who's on this week? Now, normally he knows I need a picture and a bio just so I have the description so I can write a description, right? So he sends me over just a name. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do with this? He's like, well, just look it up. I'm like, oh, thanks, buddy. I appreciate it.
What if I get the wrong guy?
It's like being handcuffed to a maniac here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. See, because you never know. Like, God forbid, like you wanted to be called Andy and your last name Guy, but your last name really wasn't Guy, and you just wanted to be called it because it was a nickname. How would I know? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So I was so thrown off. But thank you, Robin. I appreciate you throwing me under the bus. I appreciate it.
No problem. Anytime.
But, Andy, I want to say,
Saves you from doing it to me.
Yeah. No, you're right. I do. But I want to say thank you so much, obviously for coming on. But I want to keep talking real quick, about what you were saying. So you have a couple things in the works, is what I'm guessing right now. So I mean, I heard about the one.
I've got a list as long as my arm.
Okay. Is there any that you could share with us real quick?
So one thing I'm very excited about, and it's something you just touched on weirdly, is about frequencies and about focusing on trying to pin it down. And that's I nicknamed it the ghost frequency because it's just a word for it. But we found that if you use a spectrum analyzer on good EVPs or good disembodied voices, we're finding a lot of amplitude in the 400 to 550 hertz range, so very low. And what if you boost the gain on those frequencies themselves, it tends to make EVPs a lot clearer. You kind of pick up a little bit more from them. So what I'm working on now is a very simple band pass filter, just to focus on those, and then have that. I'm working with a passive one at the moment, but I'm also working on an active one, depending on which works better. It's experimentation. But then use different things to pass through it. So put a guitar pick up there, so you're only picking up those frequencies. Put a microphone through it, so you're only picking those frequencies, and then see if you're just recording those, what do you get? Because that's too low for a lot of things, and it seems to be linked to when we are actually getting EVPs. So do we suddenly get a lot clearer EVPs because we haven't got all the other junk behind it? So I'm very excited about that, because there's lots of possibilities with that, and if it does work, then we've learned a lot more about a few different fields and a few different phenomena.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely awesome. AJ,
That's something you could probably do yourself, actually. AJ, you must have that sort of equipment with your guitar.
I actually don't at the moment. I can't actually. Jenny, you have to unmute yourself. I'm sorry, I can't do it. Won't allow me to do it.
Oh, I muted myself. I don't have a question. I'm just having a break.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and frequencies, you know how much I love them. So
Ask away.
Yeah.
We're actually about to be ongoing with the show, but I wanted to see if you had another question real quick. But before I say that, Andy, what you just said, I actually don't have that equipment on me right at the moment, but I did recently, but I had to get rid of it not too long ago. So I actually have to, that's why I'm buying all new equipment right now. I'm trying to get all my stuff back that I want to get. So that's why it was perfect that you came on and shared all this great stuff, because now I'm going to be in contact with you all the time. I'll probably be annoying you about it. Andy, what do you got coming up next?
How'd you block people
sorry
again?
about that.
Yeah. But Jenny, before we end the show, you want to ask one last question?
No. I've actually really enjoyed listening to what he's had to say today. There's so much information that we don't know, but to find people that are actually researching and tapping into that, it's just game changing for everyone, and good luck with all the work that you're doing, because it's clearly quite exceptional.
Thanks. And it's all about having these sort of conversations and sharing it. I think there is people out there doing really interesting things, but they're working very much in isolation, or don't want. I don't feel like they can really share what they're finding in case it's not right. But I'm like kind of like, this is working for me at the moment. You give it a go, and if you find out it's something else, then fine. We'll just forget about that and move on to the next thing. But
I think that's the important part. I think that's the important part of ascertaining the data that we do, because being able to get that information, and then it takes, everyone would like to have that essence to be able to do what you do, but not everybody can, so it is game changing with everything that you are doing, clearly. So good luck, good work.
I'm different. I think everybody can do what he does. It's just a matter of if you will take the risk and if you will take the time to learn it. That's the biggest problem. Most people don't want to take the time to learn it, because I know me, I honestly wouldn't take the time to learn it, even though as much as I love it, because it seems like it's too much for me. I'm going to be honest. I'm one of those people. But
that's it. And there's heaps of people that are like that. There's so many people that are like that. So to be able to get, there's not the same with what I do. It's the same with what a lot of people do. Everybody has their set skills and things, and and to be able to ascertain information, and the circle, the merry-go-round would go continuously if there wasn't people, like Andy, to change it. And that's what we need, and that's what we need in the industry.
And the point is that you don't always need the skills, but you just need that questioning attitude. Just like yourself, you're like, I saw this thing happen. I kind of want to learn a bit more about it. You didn't just go, fine, that's it. I'm not going to do anything with it. You kind of, that's how you progress. You just ask that question. Then if you ask the right person the question, then they might be able to help you with it.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, Andy, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on. I'd love to have you on again for sure.
It's been an absolute blast. It's been lovely meeting you guys.
So thank you.
You too.
Jenny, thank you so much for coming on too. We really appreciate it. I'm sorry that it was a little, dodgy up and down. Apologies about that.
It was fun. It was like
Andy will have 2 friend requests here whenever we,
by the sound of it.
Bring it on me. It's all good.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, definitely.
But,
and I'm sorry that I was in and out for the show. I am at work, and I'm sort of by myself at the moment, running the team. They're waiting for the girls to arrive, so it's all good.
Great. Well,
No
awesome. Well, hey,
problem.
thank you guys so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thanks
no
for
problem.
Very
having
much.
me.
Stay in
Cheers.
touch.
Talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Bye.
Wow, man, dude, I tell you, there's so much awesome stuff going on in the paranormal field that, like, you know, like obviously we're able to uncover and bring onto the show, and people like Andy, that's just absolutely amazing.
Do you know what? Do you know what, right? I actually didn't even know that he was looking and inventing half the stuff that he actually is. Because when you read it, when you read his profile, it's like, you really, thanks, Charles. You
Thanks,
really,
Charles.
you don't get to know someone. I've always said this about anybody. You can read a profile and think that person's got the right idea. Until that person's in front of you speaking to you, you just you don't get what that
Yeah,
person's about.
no,
And,
absolutely.
honestly, amazing.
No, totally amazing. And you know, it's crazy because, like I said before when I was joking around, like, you know, I'm not the type of person where I can go out and learn something like that. I can if I wanted to, probably, but I just wouldn't want to. So I leave it up to people like Andy to create amazing things so that I could be like, hey, can I bother you? I want to buy one. You
But
know,
like,
because
this is the thing.
it's,
This is the
it's
thing in this field, and
yeah,
although this is a podcast, but in the general paranormal field, is if we all work together, then we can network with people like that. I mean, we
yeah,
can throw ideas to people like that. They can throw ideas to us. They can come on here whenever they want and show all the new stuff they want, and and
yeah.
work together. And, I'm not going to get into it because I mean, I'll end up saying stuff I probably shouldn't. But it's like,
I get what you're saying, man. Hey, you know what? That's the reason why I created this show, man. I created it to bring on people like Andy, to bring on other researchers, to share their evidence, to share their, inventions, to share their work, to share their data, to share everything, because I think that it's important that we share all this stuff. It's not,
it
we
is.
shouldn't be against one another. We should be working towards something great. And the more that we work together, the more of us that do it, I think the greater possibilities are, and of figuring this out. So I think it's absolutely great. But man, great show. Thank you guys for watching. My name is AJ Capasso, host of Talking with the Source. And go ahead, brother.
Robin Haffern from Haffern Paranormal and Talking with the Source.
Well, until next time, thank you guys so much for watching. Peace.